this regularly scheduled meeting in the Community Development Committee for the Metropolitan Council to order. It is Monday, August 21st, 2023. We have a quorum of the committee. It's going to be kind of a small committee today. We have a lot of folks that are out for various reasons. So I'm Chair Councilmember Robert Lilligren, joined by a quorum of the committee. We have an agenda before us, and if there's no objections or changes, we'll consider that approved. And we will move into approval of the August 7th, 2023 Community Development Committee minutes that were sent out or were posted. And committee members, I would entertain a motion to approve.
Move approval.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. We have that motion before us. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in approval, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Excuse me, that carries. And I apologize, committee members, there must be something in the air or something that's just really irritating me, so, oh, I think it's fine, thank you. We will move into our, and I also forgot my reading glasses today, so I might be a little, right, yeah. So I appreciate everyone being here, it's a great group. The first item of business on our agenda is business item 2023-188. It's the public hearing for the 2024 Annual Public Housing Agency Plan. Just so folks know, as an administrator of the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development's Housing Choice Voucher Program, HUD's Housing Choice Voucher Program, the Met Council and Redevelopment Authority, the Met Council's Housing and Redevelopment Authority is required to prepare and submit an annual update to our Public Housing Agency Plan. The plan serves as a guide for the Metro HRA, Housing Redevelopment Authority programs, policies, operations, and strategies for serving the needs of very low and extremely low income households. The plan is intended to be a convenient source of information for program participants, for the federal government, and for the communities of the region. The administrative plan, the HRA's main policy document, is an attachment to the plan. This annual Public Housing Authority plan and its attachments are the subject of our hearing today. So I will open the public hearing. We welcome all the public comment. So far we have 11 pre-registered, and then some people have registered today to speak. So I will call your name and ask you to please come forward to make your comments. Individuals will have about 3 minutes to comment, and official representatives of an organization will have 5 minutes. When you speak, please state your name for the record, your place of residence, and what organization you represent, if any, and then please share your comments with us. So I will go with the pre-registered first. I do have some folks that signed in today, but we'll make sure that everyone has the opportunity to speak. So to start, I have Marilyn Allen, is that correct, from Edina? Please, Ms. Allen, come forward, have a seat. Welcome.
Honorable Chair Lilligren and CDC members, good afternoon or good evening, whichever you prefer. I am Marilyn Allen. I live in Edina. I'm a member of St. Stephen's Episcopal Church. I first became acquainted with Beacon Interfaith Collaborative as a member of our outreach committee. This year, after considerable research, Beacon became the recipient of the largest donation we have ever given to any group to help support the development of Astor Commons for neurodivergent youth. During my 7 years as a Beacon leader, I have worked on 66 West for youth in Edina, Vista 44 for families in Hopkins, and now on Astor Commons. I know firsthand the widely respected work Beacon does to develop high-quality, affordable housing and supportive services for our most vulnerable neighbors. For the neurodivergent youth among us, Astor Commons will improve mental and physical health, support educational activities, future employment, and participation in civic life. It is literally the key to hope for these young people. But Beacon cannot do this work without project-based vouchers. Beacon built 66 West with 39 PVVs. Vista 44 in Hopkins with 50 PVVs. The Met Council has been allocated over 7,000 housing choice vouchers by HUD. About 500 of these vouchers become available every year to be used as tenant-based vouchers or project-based vouchers. We expect you to receive another 1,000 vouchers from the new Metro sales tax in 2025, which Beacon was instrumental in getting passed. HUD policy allows regional housing authorities to use up to 30% of their vouchers as PVVs to catalyze the construction of 30% AMI housing in low-income suburban areas, the 30 for 30 PVV policy. I am urging you to direct Metro HRA to take full advantage of HUD's 30 for 30 voucher policy by adding it to the 2024 annual and administrative plans, and to coordinate PVV awards with Minnesota Housing's capital funding cycle so that developers can plan efficiently and effectively. There is no time more opportune for taking a big step toward ensuring that everyone has a home. Thank you for all of the work you've already done for affordable housing. It's much appreciated. Let's push on now and do more. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Allen. Thank you. Next on my list, I have Barbara Brooks. And following Barbara is Dean Damon. Welcome, Ms. Brooks. Thank you.
Chairman Lilligren and CDC members, good afternoon. I am Barbara Brooks, advocate with Beacon Interfaith Housing and a member of Waconia Moravian Church. I do live in Waconia. I'm here today because my working years were spent helping low-income people. In the early 70s, rental costs were reasonable even for those whose incomes were limited, but that definitely is no longer the case. Our low-income neighbors are really struggling, and my faith demands that I speak up on their behalf because we do have the opportunity to be of help to them. We have the power to help some of them, especially with the new tax imposed on metro area counties in support of affordable housing. I volunteer with Beacon because of the organization's commitment to provide housing for those at the lowest incomes. In many cases, a service provider works on site, which is more expensive but also much more effective. Prior to my association with Beacon, I was a volunteer with MICA, and I have worked with AON as a resident services coordinator. I have seen personally what a difference housing can make, a housing voucher can make. And I'm here to encourage you to create a policy which guarantees that project-based vouchers are allocated every year, up to 30% of total vouchers allocated to the Met Council each year. This policy would help the Met Council meet its stated goals for affordable housing, as well as create a level of certainty for affordable housing developers such as Beacon, Aon, others that we know about. I'm not advocating just for Beacon, but for all affordable housing developers. In one of my jobs, I worked in Hopkins, so I'm delighted that Vista 44 is now under construction with your help. As was mentioned earlier, they received 50 vouchers. I wish that this was true for Prairie Point and Shakopee, since I live in Waconia, which is Carver County. We have a vested interest in Prairie Point in Shakopee. And it is languishing partially because of a staff decision not to issue any project-based vouchers in 2022. I am requesting that the CDC and the Met Council create a policy which guarantees that project-based vouchers will be issued every year. The upside to project-based vouchers is they are all used. There are homeless individuals and families in Carver and Scott counties. Beacon's program of Families Moving Forward can attest to that fact. So can his house based in Chaska. There is a need in suburban areas for more affordable housing. Please be part of the solution. And thank you for your time and attention.
Thank you, Ms. Brooks. Thank you very much. Next, we have, it looks like Damon Dean, and following that is Teresa Delata. Mr. Dean, welcome.
Thank you. Honorable Chair Lilligren and CDC members, my name is Damon Dean. I'm a 23-year resident of Mendota Heights and a parishioner of St. Joan of Arc Catholic Community, where I've served on the housing ministry team. I'm a board member of Beacon Interfaith Housing Collaborative and a member of the Emerson Village Leadership Team, which is working with the community of North Minneapolis to build a 40-unit supportive family housing residence there. I have not experienced homelessness, but I have friends who have, and who have benefited from housing vouchers. I've learned that they were project-based vouchers, super vouchers, if you will, that not only provide the rent support low-income families need to live in our community, but are an essential component in constructing the homes they live in. Unfortunately, there are few project-based vouchers available. Current Metro HRA policy fails to create a dependable annual pipeline to spur, instead of slow, the construction of new 30% AMI housing in suburban communities. Your own research shows a huge and growing need for deeply affordable housing in the suburbs. Low-income families who live in my community struggle to find housing near their work and their children's schools. Relying on Minneapolis to build enough 30% AMI housing with their project-based vouchers instead of fully utilizing HUD policy to create your own is not an equitable solution. It simply concentrates low-income housing in the inner cities and locks in the historic housing disparities that have been in place for decades. I've spent the past 4 years working with Beacon to pass Bring It Home Minnesota at the state legislature. The new Metro sales tax, as you've already heard about multiple times already, included in that bill will generate approximately 1,000 new rent vouchers for Metro HRA. I urge you to use at least 30% of the new vouchers to provide nonprofit developers the project-based vouchers they need to build transformative housing in suburban communities throughout the whole metropolitan area, and to allow 2 years or more for developers to secure capital funding before your PVV's awards expire. And from my experience, it takes a lot of time to raise the money to develop the sort of supportive housing that we need. Thank you, Chair Lilligren and CDC members, for your project-based vouchers you have already awarded to Beacon and other nonprofit housing developers, and for inviting members of the community like me to share our stories, thoughts, and aspirations regarding project-based vouchers and deeply affordable housing. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Dean. Very much. Next, to speak, we have Teresa Delata, and following that is Bill Dorgan, please. Ms. Delata, welcome.
Thank you. I'm also going to sit over here because I don't like to have my view obstructed from the people I'm speaking to. So, good day, Chair Lilligren and CDC members. I'm Teresa Delata, and I've lived in my South Minneapolis apartment since August of 2015. And I'm a very active member of St. Joan of Arc Catholic Community, also on their housing ministry team. Since I turned 18, I've experienced homelessness at least 8 times, both in the suburbs and in Minneapolis. Right now, I'm on a wait list for a rent voucher through the Minneapolis Public Housing Authority, but it's likely I'll have to wait a decade or longer before I actually receive one. I am very concerned about the lack of affordable housing outside the central cities. As I've personally experienced, many low-income people have to move to the city because they can't find housing they can afford in the suburbs. HUD has created the 30% PVV option to help housing agencies undo a legacy of redlining and racial segregation in suburban communities. By not taking full advantage of HUD's policy to help meet your own affordable housing goals in the suburbs, the CDC is perpetuating historical racial disparities in the greater metro area. It's been argued that there aren't enough vouchers to project-base 30% of them. So this past legislative session, I testified at the Capitol in support of the Metro sales tax to help fund additional vouchers from the state through the Bring It Home campaign. We were able to secure 5,000 more vouchers, and about 1,000 of these will be allocated to the Metro HRA. I'm here today to ask you to adopt the 30 for 30 project-based voucher policy to apply to all new vouchers that Metro HRA will receive from the Metro sales tax, if not to your total supply of available vouchers. There has never been a more opportune time to use vouchers to create deeply affordable housing. And since state law doesn't mandate that landlords accept vouchers, having vouchers that are tied to a specific housing unit, especially in the suburbs, guarantees that that unit will remain deeply affordable. So thank you, Chair Lilligren and CDC members, for agreeing to engage in serious discussion about the role project-based vouchers can play in building new deeply affordable housing in the suburbs. As a person with lived experience of homelessness and a board member of Beacon Interfaith Housing Collaborative, I look forward to participating in this discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Delato. Nice to see you again. Thanks for being here. Next to speak, we have Bill Dorgan, and following that is, Mr. Gerald.
Venice Gerald.
Venice Gerald. Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Lisa. Welcome, Mr. Dorgan.
Thank you. Thank you. Honorable Chair Lindgren and CDC members, I'm Bill Dorgan. I live in South Maplewood, and I'm a member of the St. Pascal's by Baylon Social Justice and Caring Committee. I've been involved in a number of community development projects, and I want to help young families in need be successful. This effort is worth our time and your consideration. Adequate housing is the first priority for poor families who sacrifice much other expenses in order to get decent housing. These families need secure housing with rent support so they can finance other needs. As volunteer members of the Beacon Collaborative, I want to thank you for awarding 10 project-based vouchers to the Gladstone Crossing development. It's a great start. When we have been awarded all of the project-based vouchers necessary to get capital funding, Gladstone Crossing will provide supportive housing for 40 families with young children, the first of its kind in Maplewood. Our partner in this effort is Solid Ground, the key nonprofit organization that will provide supportive services on a continuing basis to meet the needs of each family. For Gladstone to be successful, these services have to be provided, as they are in other projects that Beacon is involved with. It's essential for Gladstone's success. Solid Ground services are permanent, reliable, culturally appropriate, and on-site. They include security, financial planning, counseling for chemical dependency, assistance with education for children and adults, daycare, food nutrition, psychological support. Supportive services allow families with great barriers, housing security in order to flourish. We can only make them available if we first provide the housing. And we can only provide the housing if we first secure enough project-based vouchers. I urge you to add a new goal to Metro HRA's 2024 annual plan directing Metro HRA mission to deeply affordable housing goals the CDD sets for communities in the greater metro area. These goals should be a priority of the Met Council. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Dorgan. Thank you very much for being here. Next to speak, we have Venice Gerald, and that will be followed by Ben Helvick Anderson. Ms. Gerald, welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Honorable Chairman and Honorable Chairs and Chairs, with your leadership and your ability to be here with us today. Thank you. My name is Venice Gerald. I'm an artist. I'm involved with Judge Latimore Library on numerous activities. I am a member of all denominations by heart. I am a driven advocate by spirit, and I do live now in the Rondo community of St. Paul. I am here today because there are conversations at the dining tables of many households, and they are eating up the subject of homelessness, and they are spitting it out. What I'm saying is, if your committee can create on paper a spaghetti junction which has highways, bridges, intersections, and roads leading into all rural America in Minnesota, all suburban America in Minnesota, and all of urban America in Minnesota, we can create one Minnesota together. We could become the group that will help to create the new generation of products in the suburbs, working throughout all viable communities in the grassroots of Minnesota. And with that said, I'm just saying thank you for your dedication and your time. But I need you to place an emphasis on the 2024 planner and highlight the needs of these vouchers that are not permittable by me to be recycled into nothingness, but to be recycled into something that is much needed. Housing vacancies with the people who are waiting to take up occupancies in the suburbs and other viable communities. So I thank you, and once again, keep the good work up.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments, Ms. Jill. Thanks for being here. Next is Ben Helvig Anderson. Following that is Tom Hool. Mr. Helvig Anderson, thanks for being here.
Thank you, Chair Lilligren and honorable committee members. My name is Ben Helvig Anderson. I'm the Vice President of Policy and Organizing at Beacon Interfaith Housing Collaborative. Beacon believes all people should be able to live in the communities they call home. Low-income families in the suburbs, especially those at or below 30% of the area median income, are increasingly unable to find homes they can afford. The Met Council's own reports state that the 7-county metro area needs 1,900 additional 30 AMI housing units to be built annually, but fewer than 200 units are actually being built every year, and only a tiny fraction of those are in the suburbs. The lack of 30 AMI housing in the suburbs disproportionately impacts Black, Indigenous, and other minority households. Our written statement details Beacon's specific policy challenges to the Metro HRA draft of the annual and administrative plans, but our response boils down to one overarching concern. If this committee approves the current plan, you are telling Metro HRA staff that it is not their responsibility to use this amazing resource, project-based vouchers, to their full extent to meet your own development goals. You are ostracizing existing housing scarcities and locking in historic racial disparities. We understand that what we ask for is complex and requires weighing of scarce resources, which is always the case in policymaking. We believe that you could find a solution by holding conversations in this committee with your staff, Beacon, and other developers. This committee can develop a policy that utilizes project-based vouchers more and honors tenant vouchers. As it is our third year advocating for this change, we know there are consequences if you do not act. If you choose to move forward without amending this current plan, fewer homes for families and individuals who desperately need them will be created. You all, the Metro HRA, has the largest allocation of housing choice vouchers in Minnesota. And thanks to the passage that many speakers have spoken to of the new metro area sales tax, you can expect to receive about 1,000 new vouchers in 2025 from the new Bring It Home Minnesota program. You could choose to use these to transform the affordable housing landscape by strategically deploying them with the amazing amount of ample state resources that will be available to build affordable housing this year, and connect those with an abundance of project-based vouchers that the Metro HRA could release. Or you could continue with the current program. There has never been a more opportune time to take bold action for affordable housing. Thank you all.
Thank you very much for your work and for being here today, Mr. Helvig Anderson. Much appreciated. Next to speak, we have Mr. Tom Hool, followed by Catherine Lamp. Mr. Hool, welcome.
Thank you, and thank you for spending a few minutes to listen to me. Honorable Chair Lindegren and the rest of the CDC members, my name is Thomas Hool, and I live in Minnetonka, and I'm a member of Bethlehem Lutheran Church, Twin Cities. I've also been an advocate for social justice for many years. I lived most of my life in the New York City metro area, but my wife and I chose to move here to the Twin Cities following our retirement, as she grew up here, and we love this metro area. We are also, however, very concerned about the lack of affordable housing outside the central cities. The PBV options, which have been spoken about tonight, could help stem longstanding issues with housing in the suburban communities, and we encourage you to take full advantage of this policy to help achieve the goals that have already been set for affordable housing in the suburbs. Failure to do this is likely to add to the alarming homelessness problem in our broader communities and also continue to push the shortage of workers for local businesses. We also worry that failing to address this cause will send us down a road of decline that many other metro areas in this country are facing for their failures to plan. As an example, we have family in San Francisco, and it is nothing short of tragic to see what is happening to that beautiful city and its surrounding areas. So we think it's imperative that the CDC to adopt project-based voucher policies that make it easier to build affordable housing in the suburbs instead of more difficult. Low-income families in the suburbs deserve no less, and I believe they are also key to our overall community's well-being. Thank you, Chair Lilligren and the CDC members for agreeing to engage in this serious discussion about the role project-based vouchers could play in building new affordable housing in the suburbs. Thank you.
Thank you, I appreciate it, Mr. Hool. Thanks for being here, thanks for your comments. Next up, we have Catherine Lamp, followed by Ann Lemke. Ms. Lamp, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair Lilligren and council members. My name is Kathy Lamp, and I'm a member of the Olivet Congregational Church in St. Paul. I live in St. Paul. Our church is a member of Beacon Interfaith Housing Collaborative. I'm here to thank you for your outstanding efforts to award so many individual vouchers to individuals and families in desperate need of housing. But I would like to stress with you that there cannot be a single solution to our housing crisis. These individuals and families need actual housing, especially housing that will welcome them with supportive services. They need real housing choices in communities where they want to live, where they have school choices, employment options, and supportive family members and friends. Please adopt a new goal in your 2024 PHA annual plan to dedicate 30% of your vouchers, or at least 30% of your vouchers, as they become available as project-based vouchers to allow nonprofit developers like Beacon to build more deeply affordable housing options, especially in the suburbs. With these wonderful new funds and additional vouchers that will become available through the good work of our state legislature, This is a real opportunity for the Met Council to increase access to supportive housing in suburban communities where it does not now exist. Well, thank you for opening the door to this discussion and for the very real possibility of using the project-based vouchers to increase safe and stable housing for our most vulnerable residents throughout the whole metropolitan area.
Thank you very much, Ms. Lamb, for being here, for your comments. Next to speak, we have Ann Lemke, please, followed by Megan Webster. Ms. Lemke, welcome.
I am Ann Lemke of St. Paul, member of St. Paschal Baylon Catholic Church, and a member of Beacon. I am here to read the following comments of a co-parishioner of mine who could not be here today. She writes, "My name is Mary Root. I live in Maplewood. I am excited to know that you are willing to talk with Beacon and other nonprofit developers about how project-based vouchers can help to make the desperate need for deeply affordable housing in metro area suburbs. I experienced homelessness for about 3 years. I got a job 3 months after I first became homeless, but my health had so deteriorated that much in 3 months that I couldn't keep it and ended up unemployed again. I am fortunate to have secure housing now, but I will never take it for granted. It is important to me that all my neighbors have a home, so I urge you to add a goal to the Metro HRA 2024 annual plan to project-base 30% of your turn-back vouchers and the new vouchers you will receive from the Metro sales tax. I know it is important to every Met Council member to create as much new affordable housing as possible, especially in suburban communities where it's most needed. Project-based vouchers make it possible. I am grateful that you have solicited and will seriously consider this public comment, and I hope that in September you will vote to take full advantage of HUD's 30 for 30 project-based voucher allowance. We need new, deeply affordable housing in suburban communities, and it's worth creating a new goal to build it. I thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Ms. Lemke. Thanks for being here. Thanks for your comments. Next, we will hear, please, from Megan Webster, and then I'll move into the list of folks who signed in to speak today. So, Ms. Webster, thanks for being here. Welcome.
Great. Honorable Chair Lilligren and CDC members, my name is Megan Webster. I'm a Richfield resident and a member of Mayflower United Church of Christ. I stand before you to advocate for a brighter future. Richfield is embarking on a transformative journey by creating an affordable housing haven for neurodivergent young adults, a vulnerable group at risk of homelessness. This includes those with ADHD, autism, dyspraxia, and dyslexia, individuals with challenges who deserve a nurturing home. This development, called Astor Commons, will need to be awarded about 40 project-based vouchers before it can be built and new residents move in. My values are rooted in the belief that everyone deserves stable housing. This conviction is shared by my faith community at Mayflower Church, where we recognize the profound impact of safe housing on individuals and families alike. While we celebrate the strides we've made in central cities, I'm deeply concerned about the scarcity of affordable housing beyond the urban centers. This is where Met Council's pivotal role comes to play. We have a responsibility to extend the benefits of affordable housing to all corners of our 7-county area. Current Metro HRA policy limits PBV awards outside its service area, but our suburban housing agencies don't have enough vouchers to build the deeply affordable housing that's needed. By joining forces and sharing project-based vouchers between agencies, we can make a tangible difference. We can give life to deeply supportive housing created not just by Beacon, but other developers as well. Affordable housing isn't just policy, it's about rectifying historical wrongs and nurturing equity. The 30% PBV option from HUD is more than a tool. It's a means to dismantle the legacy of redlining and racial segregation in the suburbs. I'm asking you to add a new goal to the 2024 annual and administrative plans, instructing Metro HRA to fully utilize HUD's project-based voucher allowance and to share its PBVs with small suburban agencies. Obviously, it'll take years to implement, but without creating this goal, no changes will be made. Thank you so much for your work on these issues and for giving me time to speak.
Thank you, Ms. Webster, much appreciated. Thanks for being here. And now we'll move into the list of folks who signed in today, and this is gonna be a little harder without my reading glasses. Michelle, maybe you can help me.
Happy to help you. Okay, the
No,
ones that-
these are all kind of no's. So,
Would you like me to?
yeah, please, if you could.
So
Thank
it
you,
looks
Michelle.
like- Okay, this person is a repeat. This is Miss Allen again, so she spoke. Tiffany Glasper.
Tiffany
Did you wanna speak
Glasper, are you here
regarding
to
public
speak on
hearing?
this? Nope, all right, thank you.
And Mr. Romero, Abu,
No,
and
I wonder if, like, they thought that was a sign-in for who attended the meeting and not to speak.
possible, thank you, yeah, some
do have,
folks
yeah.
did check the I wanna speak box,
Yeah.
but.
yeah, the last one, yeah, that was the last one was Romero.
So I just want to make sure everyone who's here to speak had an opportunity to speak. So if you weren't signed in and you did want to speak during the public hearing, please step forward now. Anyone? Okay, thank you. So with that, I will close the public hearing, and I want to thank everyone for attending, excuse me, for participating. I want to thank you for being so well prepared to speak here, and I want to assure you, this is a 2024 annual plan that we're considering now, an annual kind of thing, but your comments are being heard, they're influencing the conversations amongst policymakers and staff really beyond 2024 as we prepare for the impacts of the Metro sales tax. And again, thanks for your advocacy in getting that passed. And also, we're establishing our 2050 comprehensive plan design guidelines, and your participation here is impacting that as well. So I just wanted to assure you of that. We'll continue to take public comments until Thursday, August 31st at 4:30 p.m. People can record comments by email, by emailing stephanie.paulson at metcouncil.state.mn.us. You can fax comments at 651-602-1313, or even write to the Met Council at 390 Robert Street North, St. Paul, Minnesota, 55101, or record a comment at 651-602-1500, or for hearing impaired, 651-291-0904. So our staff will record a summary of these public comments and all the public comments received prior to the approval of the PHA plan. And and again, I really want to assure you that your involvement in advocacy is having impact here, so thank you. And we will now resume the remainder of our meeting agenda. Committee members, cool? Fine with that, great. Thank you again for being here. We'll move on to our non-consent business items. The first is item 2023-187. It's amend summary budget title and location of the Seward Commons Project, TOD, Transit Oriented Development Grant. And Nicole Clapp, is Nicole here to present? There, everything's. Ms. Clapp, welcome.
Hello, Chair Lilligren and council members of the Community Development Committee. My name is Nicole Clapp. I'm the Acting Grants Manager for the CD MTS Finance and Administration Unit, and my pronouns are she, her. The action up for your consideration today is that the Community Development Committee approve amending the Seward Commons Transit-Oriented Development Grant to 1, amend the budget as outlined in your business item. 2, approve changes to the project's FTEs and the number and level of affordable housing units. 3, update the name of the grant. And finally, 4, incorporate the updated project map. We do have representatives from the city of Minneapolis, the grantee, and also the developers here that are available to answer questions, should you have them. Okay, so for a little background on this grant, the city of Minneapolis was awarded a $1.5 million Livable Communities Demonstration Account Transit-Oriented Development Grant in January of 2022 for the Seward Commons project. The project is the last part of a multi-phase redevelopment of land around the Franklin Avenue station. The project was to redevelop a dense small site parcel for affordable housing and to relocate a community garden CSA onto the roof of an adjacent building to preserve it as an asset for the community. So on to the request. On June 15th of 2023, the city of Minneapolis requested to amend multiple components of the grant. They explained that the rooftop CSA was a commercial food production enterprise, which is ineligible for grant funding, but was initially misunderstood to be an eligible green roof solution. They requested the council amend the grant project summary to shift awarded funds from the rooftop CSA to other eligible project activities. Specifically, they requested funding to be reallocated to a green roof and stormwater management for the affordable housing building, 39 raised garden beds for tenants of the affordable housing building, and for the remaining funds to cover increased construction costs for the project's other grant-funded activities, more public art, and community engagement. Because the project would now be an entirely affordable housing project and no longer include an adjacent rooftop CSA, Minneapolis informed the council that the number of anticipated FTE jobs would be reduced from 6 to 3. However, the city reported the project is adding 7 affordable units and is increasing the amount and level of affordability from deeply affordable units from 9 to 33. They requested to update those unit totals and affordability levels in the project summary. Additionally, they requested to change the title of the grant from Seward Commons to Wadag Commons to align with planned public art and to be more reflective of the surrounding community. Lastly, the city requested the council correct the project location aerial map in the agreement to show the updated location and address of the project, eliminating the adjacent site that was intended to house the rooftop CSA. So in terms of the significance finding, excuse me, the amendment request to adjust the budget for grant-funded activities constitutes a removal of a grant-funded activity and a prominent feature of the project originally approved by the council. As previously stated, it would reduce the FTEs for the project from 6 to 3. This constitutes a significant change for the project. The shift in funding also equals a 44% shift of total grant funds between budgeted line items. Committee approval is required for any project scope change or budget shift above 20%. The increase in affordable housing units and increased affordability of units does not require CDC approval. The reduction of FTEs and environmental factors related to the CSA green roof systems would have earned fewer points in the scoring for the 2021 scoring round. However, the project was the top scoring application. Even with the reduced score, it would have been recommended for funding. Therefore, council staff recommend the committee approve amending the project summary as outlined in attachment B. So this slide outlines the eligible activities, originally awarded amounts, and the requested budget shifts. The grant funds the project's site preparation, public infrastructure, stormwater management, and placemaking spaces. including a community garden and playground for affordable housing residents, public art and plaza, and bike parking. So the recommendation, therefore, Mr. Chair, is that we ask the Community Development Committee to approve amending the Seward Commons TOD Development Grant Project Summary to 1, shift funds from a rooftop CSA to raised bed gardens, green roof, site and infrastructure costs, and public art. 2, reflect the project's increase in affordable housing units, increase in the affordability of those units, and decrease in jobs. 3, update the name of the grant to WetAg Commons. And 4, correct the aerial map showing the location of the project as detailed in attachment B and C of the report. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Clapp, for your report and for your work on this project. Committee members, questions for Ms. Clapp on the project? So, you know, I will disclose, this is very near where my day job is, just about a block or so away, and that I will disclose that my organization does a lot of food sovereignty work. We have an urban farm and a farmer's market. We've been in conversation with the developer about this project and the food production aspects. We have no financial interest in the project, so, yeah, thank you. Yeah, Councilmember Lindstrom.
Maybe you have some perspective on this, Mr. Chair, or you do as well, but the loss of the CSA component to this, I'm curious about the neighborhood impact about that. That seems like something that was gonna be open to everybody in the neighborhood. Now it's gonna be these raised beds, which is really nice for the residents, but less of a neighborhood impact or no neighborhood impact. And I'm curious either your perspective or your perspective on what the neighbors think about that.
Yeah, thanks, Councilmember. Maybe I'll turn it to Ms. Clapp, and I do have perspective on that, and I could probably take up the rest of our time sharing that perspective, so I may spare you that. Ms. Clapp.
Councilmember Lindstrom, thank you for the question. And as the acting grants manager and someone stepping into covering this amendment, I don't have a lot of contextual information about the project, but we do have project representatives here, and I would invite any of them to come forward to answer your question if they have additional context.
Cool. Would any representatives from the city or the developer like to comment? Please, Ms. Glasper. Always a pleasure.
Will all come up.
Yeah.
I have limited experience with the project. I've been relatively recently assigned. I think what I would say in response to your comment is that I believe the developer is planning extensive programming around these 39 raised planter beds, and any of the planter beds that are not taken by a resident will be offered to the general community at large. It's my understanding.
Thank you, Ms. Glasper.
So I hope that it's not as big of a community impact, but it is still there.
And I would just add on to that, my name is Abby Romero. I'm a member of the development team from Redesign. My role in this is to kind of manage the whole project, and so I'm very familiar with what led to this change. I've only been on the team, however, for about 2 years, and some of this, the original application was written before my time. However, our intent is to not eliminate the community-driven aspect of the CSA program. I do want to note that our partner organization, Growing Lots, has since moved to Wisconsin and is out of the neighborhood, unfortunately. And so we have offered them the role of partnering with us to create and curate educational opportunities for not only the residents, but for the community at large. On the site, there is a huge history of food justice work and a community growing kind of organization right in this neighborhood. And so our intent is to, as much as we can, open this up to the community and to really partner with organizations that are culturally aware. So for example, our Growing Lots has a connection actually with the Somali American Farmers Association, and we hope to begin conversations with them pretty imminently to talk about partnering on that educational aspect. We also do have my partner here, Noel Noor, and this development is intended to be a culturally sensitive and aware development. Specifically, we're looking at how can we make larger units available to families, deeply affordable units available to families, specifically kind of focusing on the needs of the East African immigrant population that has a prominent place in our community and is really close to our hearts. And so our intention is to not only kind of move some of that programming towards WADAG, but to enhance that programming with a culturally relevant organization.
Thank you very much. And I would just add, there is a robust urban agriculture community very near this site, and that there is increasing efforts, and I'm really happy to say that my organization, NACD, is part of them, to better coordinate with the community and to offer programming and yeah, so thanks for that answer, very good. Councilmember Lindstrom? Any other questions? Yeah, Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So it looks like you're going from 32 units to 39 units, and are you going up a story too? Is that where you're capturing those additional units?
The first plan was initially drawn up based on a non-2040 plan, and so it met those requirements to not exceed height over 5 stories. However, with the additional increase in height, we've been able to add about 7 new deeply affordable units. We also did get a commitment from MPHA, this is relevant to our earlier discussion, of 24 project-based vouchers, which will make this development, I think, 85% of all units will be deeply affordable to folks making 30% or less of AMI.
And Mr. Chair, just follow. So I'm understanding that the money, of course, that would have gone into the community garden rooftop is now being brought back into project. It's helping to mitigate some of the costs that have gone up over the last few years, and it's also then adding, under the new 2040 plan, the additional units and height. Is that kind of essentially where it's all going?
That's correct. So just to clarify a little bit, the 2 projects were together as one grant application.
Okay.
So it's not leaving the project, it's not coming back into the project, it's staying within the project, it's just going to a different component of the project.
Okay, so the funds aren't moving, they're moving into the things that you're talking about and the changes that you've got in this letter too.
That's correct.
Okay, well, and I just want to, again, say it's pretty great when you see, anticipated bedrooms, 7 1-bedrooms, 17 2-bedrooms, 6 3-bedrooms, and 9 4-bedrooms. That's a big deal. So I do appreciate that. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Further discussion, committee members? Councilmember Lindstrom.
Super quick, $23,000 for bike parking. Is that the going rate for bike racks these days? That seems like a lot.
Here's what I can comment on that. That is a number that we have been given based on the amount of bike parking we have, which is an over 1-to-1 ratio. And so I believe, can't remember exactly how many stalls we have, but we are investing in secure and safe and covered bike parking.
That's what I figured.
So a portion of those bike parking spaces will be in a covered outdoor area, and that we hope to have designed by local artists. And so there's a cost component to that, of course. And then the other bike parking pieces we'll have in the basement, which will be racks attached to the parking stalls as well.
Thank you.
Good investment. Committee members, further discussion? If not, I would, just before I ask for a motion, just mention, I work, like I said, very near here, and there are 2 other developments, so this will be 3, where our transit-oriented development grants have invested in these kinds of public realm improvements, and they have made such a difference, and now it's just such a great leverage of our dollars, and these projects score very well. This one, as well as the Minneapolis American Indian Center that we awarded last term, and there's also Housing by American Indian Community Development Corporation. And so our dollars are really having an impact here on what I consider the American Indian Cultural Corridor along East Franklin. So good work. With that, I would entertain a motion to approve the series of actions that Ms. Clapp has brought forward. Thank you, Councilmember Berke. Is there a second? Is that a second, Councilmember? Thank you, Councilmember Lindstrom. Discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all in approval, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? That carries. Thank you very much for being here. Thanks for your good work. Next is our second non-consent business item. It's item 2023-188, Property Management Services Contract. And Stephanie Paulson's here to present. Ms. Paulson, welcome.
With this awesome presentation. Here we go.
There it is.
All right. Good afternoon, Chair and council members. My name is Stephanie Paulson. I'm the Assistant Director at the Metropolitan Council Housing and Redevelopment Authority. I'm here today to talk to you about property management services contract for our family affordable housing portfolio. Those are those 154 council-owned properties scattered throughout the metro area. Before we start, I thought I would ground us in what the Family Affordable Housing Program is. I know you all are absolute experts in the work that we do. We bother you all the time and come visit you. The FOP was established in 1999 as a result of the Home and Consent Decree, which settled housing discrimination and litigation brought against HUD and MPHA. The council was approved to voluntarily convert these units from public housing to project-based vouchers in 2009. But that was after the acquisition of about 150 units in 11 cities throughout the region. Those cities are Blaine, Coon Rapids, Eden Prairie, Edina, Golden Valley, Maple Grove, Minnetonka, Plymouth, Richfield, Shoreview, and Roseville. Like you might recall, in 2021, Director Smith and I have visited you separately to add 4 units to this portfolio through the Edina Affordable Housing Partnership, but that was the first edition after many, many years. Our portfolio is very complex. We are 154 scattered site units in 11 communities. We have 78 single-family homes or twin homes. We have 76 townhomes, and we have 60 associations. Whatever property management company that we contract with is responsible for everything here and then anything else that kind of comes up. So 154 scattered site units, rent collection, maintenance, unit turns, annual capital improvement projects, health and safety, housekeeping and rental licensing inspections and coordination, project-based voucher and HRA compliance, along with miscellaneous requests. So I'll just give you a couple more details about what some of these things mean. Project-based voucher and HRA compliance, that's really understanding our forms, understanding our process, the recertification process, when they could expect tenant portions to be sent, owner portions, pre-inspection and inspection compliance, and understanding the requirements as it may relate to the federal voucher program. What are some miscellaneous requests? The storm that just went through Richfield recently, we were in contact, the property management company and I were in contact late that night and then the next day about visiting and driving through Richfield to make sure that all of the units were intact. So any damage, any trees down, roofs, anything, that would be an example of kind of coordinating these miscellaneous requests. Association responsibilities, change in associations that happen sometimes, insurance claims, neighbor contacts, and coordinating conversations with neighbors. And I meet with them monthly to review financials, residence requests, property needs, and recommendations for updates. Here's a general outline of the solicitation when we worked with procurement. So the council's procurement department created a solicitation timeline for us, and we tried to follow it as best we could. In May, a formal RFP was issued, so request for proposals. It's a competitive process that procurement helps to guide us through. On May 8th, there was a pre-proposal meeting hosted by a council principal contract administrator. So that person leads the conversation, makes sure we're covering all the council procurement requirements, and I'm there to answer any project-specific questions. June 1st, a proposal was received, and July 19th, there was a consensus meeting and evaluation with the evaluation panel. And that meeting was also led by the council principal contract administrator. When we issued the RFP, there were 5 plan holders that downloaded the RFP documents. That means that the way procurement described it to me, is they download the RFP documents to disseminate to people that they would feel might be interested in it. There were 3 suppliers or consultants that requested information about it, and companies that downloaded the RFP were, and there were 2 of those, and those are called plan rooms. So I had to get some procurement language updates. It's like another language. I also requested and reached out to Minnesota Multi-Family Housing to see if they could get me a list of any agencies that may be registered with them, and procurement did some additional solicitation to 11 additional firms. We received 1 proposal, and that's from Kingwood Management. When only 1 proposal is received, procurement does an adequate competition determination. So that just ensures that it's a process where outreach is done by the principal contract administrator to determine why vendors maybe weren't interested in our proposal or in our solicitation. And for the reasons listed above, it wasn't surprising to us. Our portfolio is not easy. It is very challenging, and mostly because of the areas that we serve. It's just a lot of surface area and landscape. We are all across the region, and so it wasn't surprising, which historically has not received a lot of interest from management companies. In these next slides, I'm just going to review a couple of highlights that Kingwood Management and the Metro HRA have accomplished. In 2020 is when I entered my role, so a lot of the information I'm going to share is when I started working very closely in this role, because that's when we could kind of, I had a different role, so we could try new things, and so I'll kind of share some of that stuff. But we did begin working with Kingwood Management in 2005. When I moved into this role, I was really eager to think about ways we could update our portfolio to meet the needs of families in our region. So in 2015, we had 67 2-bedrooms, 68 3-bedrooms, 13 4-bedrooms, and 2 5-bedrooms. And having only 2 5-bedrooms and only 13 4-bedroom units and 150 at that time, 150 unit portfolio, drew my attention. And so since now in 2023, we have 12 4-bedrooms, 7 5-bedrooms, and we are in the process of turning 2 right now and adding a 4th bedroom to 2 3-bedroom units. So at turn, now part of the process for the property management company is to inform me of opportunities to add bedrooms, change structure to ensure that we still have living space for families, but also if there's an unfinished basement, let's say, what would be the cost to add an egress and have a living space in the basement and also an extra bedroom, for example. We also, like you might recall, when we had our Edina Affordable Housing Partnership, sought out units where we could house larger families. So we added a 5-bedroom, a 3-bed, and 2 3-bedrooms with the opportunity to add additional bedrooms in the basement of 1 unit in Edina. The 2 units right now that we are converting from 3 bedrooms to 4 bedrooms, one is in Richfield, which is our first 4-bedroom unit in Richfield. The other is in Golden Valley, which is our first 4-bedroom unit in Golden Valley. We also started looking at capital improvement awards just a little bit differently. I met with procurement to figure out the MCUB directory and how we could think about marketing some of our capital improvement projects to MCUBs. So every year when we go out for kind of our planned capitals, and that might be like a roof, gutters, windows, concrete, those types of things, siding, I first pull all of the vendors off of the MCUB directory and review, because if you do a search for roofs, you can sometimes get like a commercial roofer. Well, they're not interested in roofing a single-family home in Richfield, so you kind of have to filter those out. And then we reach out to MCUBs that may be interested in our solicitation. And since 2020, 59% of our annual capital improvement project awards have gone to MCUBs. Occupancy, we have an average occupancy rate of 97% and pretty much been solidly between 97 and 99. We dipped in 2021, mostly as a result of the pandemic, to 96%. But overall, 97% in occupancy. Kingwood Management completes maintenance requests typically between on the low end in 2019, 3 days, on the high end, 8 days when we were in the pandemic, coordinating supply issues, at-home learning, and COVID exposure delays. So we might say we were going to come and then not be able to come for whatever reason. So I wanted to just share some of those highlights with you as our Kingwood Park Management Partner. So today, I'm asking that you authorize the regional administrator to execute property management services agreement for contract 22P160 for the Family Affordable Housing Program not to exceed $1,098,328. This is a one-year contract renewable up to 5 years. And with that, I will take any questions that you have about the solicitation, the portfolio.
Thank you, Ms. Paulson. Appreciate the recommendation and the work on this. And this is a very small sort of number of affordable units, but it always generates a lot of interest on the council. So I appreciate the update. And this is a business line we got into based on the Holman decree, you may recall. So we are in the housing business ourselves. So great. Any questions, Councilmember Wolf and then Councilmember Lindstrom?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So you talked about MCUBs doing the annual capital improvement projects, but you also had that listed under property management services. Can you explain who does what?
Ms. Paulson.
Mr. Chair and Councilmember Wolf. So are you talking about on the annual property, was it?
On slide 2.
Okay, perfect. Annual capital improvement projects. So what happens is every year, they give us kind of what their recommendations are that they're seeing as needing immediate attention. That list is a general list and is often reprioritized based on maybe a city citation. So the city might say, we really need you to redo a stoop, or we really need you to add a rail or something. And we have a 1, 2, 3 year, and then kind of a longer range plan for annual capital improvements. So they'll look at the list. And what we try to do is bunch by scopes. So we'll say maybe we'll do 5 roofs, 3 concrete projects, and 2 houses with windows or something. And then what I will do is I will work with them to get the names of vendors to solicit to and ask them to send them to. And they can, it's not just the MCUBs that we send to, there's other vendors as well. But to ensure that we have given opportunity for our MCUB vendors to also submit proposals for those projects.
Councilmember Wolf.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So they don't actually do the work, they just come up with the list? Is that
Correct.
what you're saying? Okay.
Chair and Councilmember Wolf, correct.
And I did the math on my calculator several days ago when I was reading this, and it was almost $600 a month per unit. That's a lot of money.
In?
The whole procurement, when you take the million plus, divide it by the number of units, and then divide by 12, it was like $594 a month. Is that normal? I'm not a property manager, so I don't know.
Sure.
Ms.
Chair.
Paulson, yeah.
Chair and Councilmember, we worked very closely with our procurement department when we received only one proposal because it's a really fair question. It's what we have found, especially in kind of current market, is the property management companies everywhere are really struggling to keep staff. We're experiencing a really high number of property management turnover. Maintenance staff that have been long-standing maintenance staff at certain properties or developments are no longer there. And so number one, it didn't surprise us that we didn't get a lot of proposals, knowing that they're scattered site, but also knowing that taking on a 154 unit portfolio when you're struggling to keep the kind of the contracts that you currently have, that wasn't surprising to us. But yes, procurement said that when they did their adequate compensation, they kind of review everything. What do they recommend? When we review our proposal, when we go through kind of the evaluation proposal meeting, we say, all right, let's look at the scope of the services that they're providing. Do we feel like it makes common sense? But then they're also responsible for kind of crunching those numbers to make sure that it passes kind of their tests as well.
Okay.
So.
Thank you. So Councilmember Lindstrom, Councilmember Carter, and then Councilmember Johnson. Councilmember Lindstrom.
Thanks. You mentioned that we've been working with this company for almost 20 years now, which is great. I suspect that's why we got one proposal is, if there's other companies that are out there and they're looking at their chances of a successful proposal and they're going up against someone that has it for almost 20 years, and they need to choose where to invest their time and resources on creating proposals, they might skip over this one. My question, though, is this is a really unique job, this property management services. They're collecting rent and doing housekeeping and taking away tree limbs and doing handyman-type work. Was there any thought about separating all of this work? Like to have one company do the rent collection and another company take care of the tree limbs and the, gutter cleaning and all the rest? Or is this really the best way to go? I don't know.
Chair, Councilmember Lindstrom, that's a great question. So I can speak to my experience. So prior to being in my current position, I was the coordinator that worked directly with the families living in the units, and then I was the manager that oversaw the program, and now in my current role. And it is certainly a very, very complex job. And what I have found in my experience as the FOP coordinator and then the manager now in the role that I am now is it creates when we have the same, we are in the units a lot, unfortunately, for rental licensing inspections, for housekeeping inspections, for HQS inspections, and sometimes those visits aren't just once. So if our city licensing inspection doesn't pass, we come back again. If the HQS inspection doesn't pass, we come back again. And so I'm very mindful about the times that we are visiting families in their space and in their homes. And so to have as many familiar faces or as many kind of keeping those visits in-house and having the same 2 or 3 maintenance people or same 2, 3, 4 property management faces go to visit, I do think there is value to that. They have, and it creates kind of the trust when families call in to us or call into Kingwood Management. We do a resident services review about every other year to ask the residents, how's it going? And we have yet to receive any reviews that are outside of just like I wish I could have, and then a very specific ask for a house maybe. But overall, the feedback that we've received has been really shining with this company. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, sure does.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Carter, then Councilmember Johnson. Councilmember Carter.
Much on the same order, this question would have been about the potential of breaking down the work so that there might be greater interest in this work, and also about how long this particular contractor has had the work. I would further ask if there may have been any thought to adjusting areas or the number of homes that are being served by a contractor in the interest of making this more attractive to others. Let me say that I do recognize the work that has been done and the achievements that you pointed out, and that this is an efficient way, as you've assessed it, of doing the work with this one company. I am also, as are others, very interested in assuring that fair competition. Has there been any thought to breaking down areas or numbers of homes?
Ms.
Chair
Paulson.
and Councilmember, it's a great suggestion and a great thought. We have had some conversations just about how to, and we did with the, contract, I don't remember what her title is, contract financial or principal administrator, or whoever the procurement title is. We did have conversations about how to ensure that we can get interest in our solicitation, because historically hasn't received much, and we were even more concerned knowing what we've seen in just regular property management services right now. And unfortunately, the result that we got was exactly what we had hoped not to do, because of course we want to make sure that it's a fair and competitive process. I think it's a fair question. I think, I don't know if we would have had, I don't know what the interest would have been, if the interest would have changed anymore, because I think it's just the fact that one of the least desirable components of this portfolio, I believe, is the townhome associations, the 60 different associations that the property management company is establishing for, or is responsible for communicating with, and paying association fees, or having a neighbor issue, or a siding issue, or an insurance claim. That in itself, I think, is very laborious. And so I think if at any point in time the Metropolitan Council wanted to slowly move away from townhomes and into more single-family homes, you know, in 20 years down the road where we have less townhomes and just less associations, I do think that that is a driving factor, because as a part of the solicitation, we had to be transparent that there are 60 associations that you will be responsible for communicating with and coordinating outdoor and tenant issues with.
Thank you, Councilmember Curtin. Thanks. Councilmember Johnson.
I think my questions have been answered, so thank you.
Oh, great, thank you. Further discussion on the report? Any further discussion? If not, Ms. Hanson has brought forward a recommendation that we authorize the regional administrator to execute the property management service agreement. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Thank you, Councilmember. Second?
Second.
Thank you, Councilmember. Any discussion on the motion? Discussion. Hearing none, all in approval, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? That carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Very much. We'll move on to our final non-consent business item for today. It's 2023-174. It's a joint committee item. It's the 2023 budget amendment for the third quarter, and Heather Giesel is here. Ms. Giesel, welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon, good evening. Mr. Chair, committee members, I'm Heather Giesel. I am the Finance Director for Community Development. My pronouns are she, her, hers. So budget amendments are a routine part of our annual process. We come to you approximately quarterly as we need to adjust our operating and capital budgets. Today, we are requesting to amend Community Development's operating budget and capital program. So this amendment includes several items from the most recent legislative session, which I'll cover in a little bit more detail shortly. So first up is in the authorizing new projects section. We are requesting to authorize $25.7 million in legacy funds that are distributed to the regional parks implementing agencies through formulas. $2.8 million in Parks Acquisition Opportunity funding that requires a $1.9 million council match. $16.6 million in 2024 state bond funds with an $11 million council match. Just over $2 million for the Parks Equity Grant Program. The final solicitation amount and selection criteria will be presented to the council later this year, so that you will see that, but we are bringing it into the budget so that we can begin work on the solicitation. But it is for the 2024, what we're calling the 2024 program. And then we have state appropriations from the general fund. So there is $9 million in modernizing regional parks. So this was a new initiative that was funded this year through legislation with a $6 million match from the council, and then a $1 million appropriation for hazardous tree removal and replacement of ash trees. And this is being distributed to the regional park implementing agencies through formula as well. And then there are direct appropriations, so nearly $49 million in direct appropriations in 14 projects. There is no council match on these. We are just the oversight agency. And you will see Nicole Clapp, who was up here presenting earlier in a couple of weeks, outlining amounts, some additional details, and then signature authorization on a number of those programs. So there will be more details to come on sort of the breakout, but you could see that too in the tables as part of this amendment as well. And then for HRA, there is a transfer of $250,000 from our reserve fund to the HRA capital program. This is to Stephanie probably just touched on some of this, but to complete some large home improvements needed to maintain the council-owned properties. So this is things like replacing roofs or windows, things like that. We've had more people move out of properties this year than anticipated, so expenses have been a little higher than normal. So just adding a little bit more to the budget to complete those. Second, in the administrative adjustments section, so just as a reminder, project details for these adjustments can be found in attachment 3 and represent projects where the funding has already been approved and is now being programmed to a specific project. So there is no formal action for you all to take on these adjustments tonight, but we've included them for transparency and accounting purposes. There is one acquisition project within those adjustments that was approved by the council through separate official actions at the recommendation of MPOSC earlier this year. And then there are the other projects that you see in this section have been reviewed for conformity with the Regional Parks Policy Plan as well. So in the closing projects section, we are removing nearly $8.4 million from 14 projects on the Parks Authorized Capital Program, or ACP. All projects have been completed and are fully expended. Additionally, we're removing 2 projects totaling about $392,000 from the HRA ACP for projects related to capital expenses with the Family Affordable Housing Program. So we are bringing in new funding for future 2023 FOP expenses. These are closing out 2021 and 2022 capital expense projects. So that's the capital side. I can stand for any questions on that, or I can move on to operating.
Any questions on the capital side before Ms. Giesel moves on to operating? Nope, seeing none, please, Ms. Giesel.
On the operating side of our amendment, we're authorizing $1 million in revenue and expenses for an EPA grant, Environmental Protection Agency, for the Climate Action Plan. This grant was presented in more detail by Executive Director Brajas at a recent council meeting. Additionally, we are programming $247,000 that was appropriated to the council during the legislative session for administration of parks grants. So this is for capital grants that are being passed through, so we get some administrative money to cover staff administration costs, which is great. And then there are some additional expenses related to the BPSI project. For HRA, revenue increases of $770,000 from HUD administrative fees and FOP rental income. Expense increases of $971,000 that is related to housing portability admin fees, housing maintenance costs, and then 4 additional FTEs due to growth in the housing voucher programs. This is being offset by roughly $200,000 in reserves. And then finally, the amendment includes $3 million in the pass-through budget for federal housing choice voucher program, so rent and utility costs. This amendment supports the Thrive outcome of stewardship by assessing future needs, responsible planning, and management of financial resources for the community development's capital and operating budgets. Our proposed action is that you authorize the 2023 Unified Budget Amendment as indicated in accordance with the attached tables. Thank you. I'd be happy to stand for any questions at this time.
Thank you, Ms. Giesel, for your report and for your work on this. Committee members, any questions, discussion? Seeing none, recommended action is that we authorize, excuse me, the 2023 Unified Budget Amendment as indicated in accordance with attached tables to the business item. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Thank you, Councilmember. Is there a second?
Second, I would
Thank you.
just comment that I think this is the biggest quarterly budget amendment I have ever seen in community development in 14 years.
Whoa.
Yes.
Yeah, any comment on that, Ms. Giesel?
No, Councilmember Wolf and committee members. Yes, I was looking at it and struggling, like, how far in the weeds do I go with this one? So I tried to keep it pretty high level, knowing that you all could look at the details in the amendment or the tables. But yes, it was a big one.
Okay, interesting.
Lots of good money coming from this.
Yeah, good news. Great. Further discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all in approval, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? That carries. Thank you very much. And that concludes our non-consent business items. We'll move on to our information items. The first is the 2022 Metropolitan Agricultural Reserves Program report. And Timothy Anderson is here to present. Welcome, Mr. Anderson.
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Oh, please, Director Bras.
As Tim comes up, I'd just like to take a moment to introduce Tim to all of you. If you haven't met him before, I know Councilmember Lindstrom has, but Tim has been with us since September as a senior planner and the council's solar advisor. And he currently serves with communities in districts 11 with Councilmember Vento. So unfortunately, she wasn't able to be here today, but just wanted to be sure you were familiar with him before he presents. He comes to the council after 14 years of working in Polk County, Wisconsin, so knows his rural areas well, and we're really pleased to have him. He's currently leading the development of engagement for agricultural and rural policy as part of our 2050 Regional Development Guide. And co-leading work on the natural systems policy for Imagine 2050. So he's here today to present on ag preserve, and I will turn it over to him.
Thank you for that introduction, Director Bras. Mr. Anderson, welcome.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, council members. Thank you for that introduction, Director Barajas. As she said, my name is Tim Anderson. I'm a senior planner and local planning assistant, along with the solar advisor for the Met Council. I'm here today to talk to you about a really important topic, which is agriculture in our region, and more specifically, to talk about the Agricultural Preserves Program and the report that came out for 2022. Firstly, I'm going to go through a little bit of history and background of the program, and then I'll go into the findings from the 2022 report. The Metropolitan Agricultural Preserves Program was developed in 1980 by the Minnesota legislature and has been overseen by the Metropolitan Council since 1982. The purpose of the program was to encourage the use of agricultural land for food production and to provide a means of preservation for long-term agricultural use in the 7-county region through local and regional planning. The program designates lands as eligible through a certification process. Communities are expected to plan accordingly in their local and comprehensive plans, zoning ordinances, and of course, mapping. In order to be eligible for this program, you need to have a minimum of 40 acres of land or greater, and you will need to be in the program for at least 8 years. There are circumstances where lesser acreages are allowed, but those exceptions are clearly outlined in statute. You may be familiar, in 2019, the legislature carved out a new opt-out procedure, which allows landowners after the first 8-year window of enrollment to opt out at any time with majority vote approval of the local authority. Agricultural property owners receive a property tax reduction as part of the program. That credit comes from the county's conservation fund, state conservation fund, and the general fund, which are all funded by the mortgage registrations and deed transfers at the county level. I'll get into the specifics of the funding mechanisms a little later in the program, or in the presentation here. The process for enrollment includes the landowner applying for the program, providing parcel information, an affidavit from the local authority certifying the parcel for long-term agricultural use, and the local authority certifying eligible lands by resolution. That's what I have for background, and we'll go into the results from 2022. Oh, yeah, I should be using this, huh? As you can see on this chart, we have information about enrollment from the year 2001 through 2022. Initially, enrollments dropped from 2001 to 2009, with the lowest program enrollment in its history of just under 180,000 acres, and that coincided with the economic downturn that we're all well aware of. After 2009, we saw a significant jump in enrollment until about 2013, and then some slight declines since then until the most recent year of 2022. Current enrollment is 195,375 acres, which is an overall decrease in enrollment from last year of about 194 acres, so not a huge decrease. And just overall, the trends since the program's inception, or I should say since 2001, in the last 20 years, the program has decreased in enrollment only about 2%. So it's been pretty steady over the last 20 years. This next chart is very similar to the last one. It just showcases the enrollment by county. As you can see in orange here, Carver County represents the largest amount of enrollment for any county. They have about half of the overall acres enrolled in the program, which is about 100,000 acres. Following that, in the dark blue, just above the orange, is Dakota County, and they have about 70,000 acres enrolled. Overall, in the last year, most of the counties experienced a slight decline in enrollment, except for Dakota County. They increased their enrollment numbers by a little over 800 acres, so. For your visual enjoyment, we have a map showing where these parcels enrollments are located in green. As you can see, as I already mentioned, Carver and Dakota counties account for the vast majority of the properties enrolled. And you can see that in the chart reflected on the right. The data that we get to compile these maps and to work on the agricultural preserves program comes from the counties and the Minnesota Department of Revenue. And then we compile it here and we share it out with the local jurisdictions, typically every spring. The next slide is about funding. The program is funded by a $5 fee from the counties for mortgage registrations and deed transfers. The counties retain half of this money for the county's conservation fund and send the other half divided equally to the Minnesota Conservation Fund and the state's general fund. If the amount of the county's conservation fund is not sufficient to reimburse the property owners in that jurisdiction, then they're reimbursed through the county's or the state's conservation fund. If that's still not enough, then the state's general fund will kick in to reimburse the property owners for the program. As shown at the bottom right of the chart, due to a balance in the county's conservation fund, it was necessary to, to cover the necessary credits needed to give to property owners, nearly $136,000 needed to come from the state's general fund and conservation fund to cover those reimbursements. The overall amount that was paid out by the county's conservation funds was about $295,000. You can see that in the bottom middle column there. In Carver County, I'll use them as an example. There was $34,500 paid out of the county's conservation fund to program participants for that nearly 100,000 acres that they have enrolled. This used up all of the county's conservation funds, and so around $120,000 was needed from the state's conservation fund and the state general fund to supplement the remainder of the reimbursements. Only Carver County and Dakota counties needed to draw upon the state's funds to account for those reimbursements, but as you can see, they are the vast majority of the enrollments, so it makes sense. Every other county was able to cover their reimbursements with their county's conservation fund from the $5 fee. And as you note, Ramsey County there, you can see 0 acres enrolled. That is due to the fact that they are a fully developed county, and so they don't have any acres enrolled. And with that, I will entertain any questions you have on the.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Some discussion here. Councilmember Johnson, then Councilmember Lindstrom, and Councilmember Carter as well. Sure. So Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Nice to meet you.
you
Appreciate
too.
this information. It's really interesting. Do you, or does anybody, outside of tracking the parcel, do you track the ownership within, like, you know, is it a lot of people, or is it, you know, a parcel could be owned by one person, or you could have one person owning many parcels? I'm just
Sure.
curious,
Yep.
who are maybe the speculators out there that might be renting their farms out, and
Sure.
it's still agricultural preserves, but, you know, kind of in the wait-and-see MUSA mode?
See if Raya knows that, the answer to that
Mr.
question. She might,
Anderson.
yeah.
Oh, Mrs. Smalley, welcome.
Thank you, council members. And just to answer your question, we do receive the information. When we receive the information from the county, it does usually include ownership information, but we don't specifically track that information as in going back and seeing whether or not the ownership of the parcel has changed. And usually, when the ownership changes is the time that we see that people want to come out of the program and or re-enroll in the program. Like those times are usually the times that are the points of decision-making for the property owners, and some parcels do expire out of the program during that time.
Okay.
I don't know if that answers your question.
Well, it does, and it doesn't, but it's okay. Because again, I was just trying to see, is there, a small number of property owners that have many parcels that are moved into the program? And just trying to understand the decision-making and who's making the decisions and that kind of thing. If it's just a lot of people with, little farming activities going on, or if it's that bigger investor type that's moving into an area.
We can certainly look at that information and extract that for you. In different counties, it may be different, as Tim mentioned earlier, based on eligibility or what parcels are eligible to enroll in the program. They have to be of a certain size, and pretty large, so they don't tend to be owned by the same person. Like not too many parcels tend to be owned by the same person, but it does happen, and we can certainly look at that if you are interested to know whether, like, how many, what's the percentage of the parcels that are owned by the same owners, if you would like to know.
Mr. Chair, you don't have to go to that work. But it will be a question I ask when I go to my mayor's meeting out in Loretto, Minnesota, because some of them have these parcels and the mayors might just kind of know. I'm just curious, who's owning and how is that ownership changing and things like that. So that description was perfect for me today. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Lindstrom.
Thanks. Good to see you again, Tim.
Yeah, you too.
What's happening in Scott County? Lots of green dots in Carver, lots of green dots in Dakota, lots of ag in Scott, but not as much participation.
Sure.
Any insight on that?
I think anything I would contribute would be pure speculation on my part, but it's
We welcome that here.
Yeah, it's a landowner decision to enroll in the program, so there must be some reason that property owners in Scott County feel like they don't see as big of an advantage, or maybe there isn't enough of a tax advantage to enroll in that program. Do you have any additional insights?
My only addition may be that there could be site restrictions, the same way that we have in Anoka County, for example, where you see very little acreage enrolled because of the type of land that is not prime agricultural soil, or that the area of the parcels tend to be smaller, so they are not eligible. And I know that between Scott and Carver County, Scott County tends to have more industrial and other freight-related land that Carver County does not have, and tends to be in agricultural production compared to Scott County. So that may account for some of that discrepancy between the two counties.
Thanks.
Interesting observation. Further discussion, Councilmember Carter.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the information. You'll be able to tell from my question that I come from a fully built-out county.
Sure.
I don't see the connection, the direct correlation between acres and the credit. Can you explain to me how the credit works?
Yeah.
Right here.
Mr. Anderson.
Let's see. So the question is the correlation between the acreage and the credit? Yes.
Or basically how the credit works, period.
Sure. The credit works. I don't know.
Do you want me to take
Sure,
that?
yeah.
Sure. Mr. Chair, Councilmember Carter, the way that the credit works is that basically the property owners will get a tax break. So if they don't have to pay as much property taxes for their properties that are enrolled in the agricultural preserves program. Yes, and it comes from that county conservation fund, which is from the mortgage and, oh my God, I always
Deed transfer.
Deed transfers, thank you. Oh, my God. So it comes, the county conservation
comes from that and accumulates, and then it pays out that, basically the tax credit
Based
that the
on-
property
right.
owners get. So it's an incentive for them to be enrolled in the program if they are
Makes sense.
eligible.
Makes sense, thank you. And, you know, I would just say, we always award farm families in Ramsey County, and I don't know if they would qualify here, but I'm gonna go back and tell them, get enrolled.
Mr. Chair, Councilor Carter, it may be a size eligibility issue, because as you saw, that it has to be a pretty significantly
Oh, yeah,
large
40
parcel.
acres, that's
So
right.
yes, that's
Yeah,
probably
okay,
why.
that's why.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Further discussion, Councilmember Wolf.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. All that green in Dakota County was my district until redistricting. Now half of that green is mine. But there are other programs for smaller parcels too, so that's why some of these areas aren't listed in here, is because there's also the Green Acres program, which can, I think, go down to 10 acres. And there's a forest preserve or something. What is it called? I had it here. Rural Preserve Program, so it's not tillable land, but it's being preserved from development. So there's all sorts of different ways that we're protecting that land from property tax pressures. Instead of it being taxed at city rates, it gets taxed like it was out in a rural area, so that we don't pressure the owners into developing their land prematurely.
Makes sense. Thank you. Further questions or comments on that report? Seeing none, thank you very much, Mr. Anderson, Mrs. Smiley, for this very interesting report. Then we'll move on to our final information item for the evening. It's the Livable Communities Act Workshop Update. Several of us participated in the, workshop, and we have Sarah Berke here to present. Welcome, Ms. Berke.
And I'll let Hannah introduce herself too.
And Hannah, thanks for being here.
Hello, everyone. I am Hannah Gary. I use she, her pronouns. I'm a planning analyst with the Livable Communities team. And we are here today to talk with you about themes that came out of our conversation a couple weeks ago.
Yes, and hello, Chair Lilligren and committee members. I'm Sarah Berke, the Senior Manager for Livable Communities and Housing. So Hannah and I will just give a brief overview of why we're here, and we have a couple of questions for you. I know it's been a long meeting already, but this is just to keep our conversation going. So as you'll remember, many of you, last winter the CDC members asked for time for more in-depth conversation about the Livable Communities Act grant program distribution throughout the metropolitan area, and for time to discuss it in advance of the 2024 fund distribution plan that we'll bring early next winter. So we gathered on July 17th, as you remember, for a discussion in a workshop format in the CDC meeting, and we enjoyed having that chance to talk all together very much. So we're just sharing a high-level overview today of the themes that emerged from this first conversation, and we want you to tell us if we heard you right. And then on October 2nd, we're tentatively planning to hold another conversation, at least an hour or so, for discussion with all of you to continue the conversation and focus more on program priorities and our approach to program changes. So today we have a little time for your brief comments and direction, but we haven't scheduled a lot of time for more in-depth conversation, but please feel free to follow up with us as staff directly to explore any topics that you may want to discuss in advance of that October session. So Hannah will review the themes from July.
Excuse me. The first work session that we had centered on high-level visions for the LCA programs. And in order to have a more in-depth conversation, the CDC members were divided into two small groups to discuss the two questions that are here on the screen before you. So those questions were, what are the biggest needs in the region that LCA can impact? And the second question was, what does an equitable LCA program look like to you? And our goals for this work session, and with our overall program assessment that we're working on right now, are really to identify funding gaps and funding priorities to be able to reduce barriers in accessing LCA funding. So these are the primary themes that emerged out of that conversation. And we did have 2 questions. The data from both of those questions were treated as a single data set rather than as 2 separate data sets. So the primary themes that came out of those conversations were social cohesion, equitable process, intersections, economic development, and impact. And in the next 2 slides, I'm going to expand on those themes a little bit more. Under the theme of social cohesion, there was a lot of conversation around community belonging, outdoor gathering space for community to connect, and the importance of having resilient communities. Aging in place was a specific topic that fell into this category. And in the outdoor space conversation, there was a specific mention of outdoor space for youth to gather. Under equitable process, that conversation focused on community engagement in the project process as well as in the program design process. The importance of including those impacted by decisions was a strong thread in both conversations. In discussing both project process and the internal process that we're going through and making program changes. Inclusion and representation came up in this theme, ensuring that there is diverse participation and power sharing. Overall, this area of conversation focused on a people-centered approach to development and our program design. The theme of intersections called for a systems thinking approach, considering how differing needs impact one another. For example, infrastructure projects will have an impact on small businesses, and housing access is tied with jobs access. There are many elements that create a safe and vibrant community, and it's important for us to understand how all of those systems interact with one another. So our final 2 themes, there was conversation around the importance of economic support, especially for small businesses across the region. Addressing economic disparities and exclusion from an economic system were also brought up as relevant conversations. We classified this as economic development, although we're discussing another term that better captures the conversation with a focus on business support and economic equity. And finally, there was a desire to have more data on communities in the region to guide decision-making and to put more resources towards evaluating impacts. The lack of available data on disparities faced by people with disabilities was highlighted as a specific need. In addition to understanding the impact that our programs have on residents, council members were interested in measuring how well LCA programs are meeting our stated goals. And Sarah is now going to go over next steps that we have.
Sure. So as I mentioned, this is an ongoing conversation to continue October 2nd. We hope in that work session to map how these themes relate to other council priorities from our strategic plan, our regional development guide, and our policy plans. We can review some data and talk about the draft process for potential program changes that might go into effect in 2025 and beyond. Because it's important that significant program changes are informed by potential users, and also that we're really well coordinated with the Imagine 2050 regional planning process, we probably would not anticipate significant program changes for 2024, but we can certainly make some changes. And they could be small changes to scoring criteria or eligible activities or other factors that we can control in that 2024 round. But we'll also look for your feedback and strategic topics related to Livable Communities Act programs that should feed back into the Imagine 2050 planning process as well. So just a couple of questions, and
we want to check back in with you and see if we captured the most important themes that came out of the conversation on July 17th. Is there anything that was missing that you remember from the conversation that isn't captured in those themes? And then our final question for you is, what do you need to know that's related to those themes to inform future discussions? So are there additional data requests that staff can fulfill, or any other information that we can bring together to help inform you in these conversations going forward?
Great. Thank you, Ms. Gary and Ms. Berkey, for this report. For the committee members that attended, it was a very different format. We met in the other room. We had tables set around. It was very workshop kind of oriented, and I really liked that use of committee time. So I look forward to the October 2nd session as well. So committee members' response to the questions or comments on the report? Councilmember Wolf.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't always follow instructions, so I'm going to answer a question that's not on the screen. I envisioned this as being more, this is very internally focused, where we all sit around and talk to each other. I envisioned all of this as being a little more externally focused and conversation with our partners, you know, the communities and the HRAs and CDAs and all of those kind of people. It sounds like you're not planning on doing any of that until next year?
Ms. Berkey.
So Chair Lilligren, Councilmember Wolf, that's a great question. There is a lot of related conversation we've been having with, you know, county and city staff and with developers and other, you know, cities and applicants to the program. And so we'd be happy to bring some of that, what we've been hearing from all those different constituents of the program to you, if that would be helpful.
Great. And that could be a topic of conversation for the October session, right? What kind of engagement do we want to see outside of the council? I think that's an excellent point, Councilmember Wolf. Councilmember Johnson.
I'll just jump off of that. So applicants to the program for sure. And then I know we've been focusing on those communities that aren't participating in our grant program. So I'm just concerned that in some communities they're just, I think, not feeling that they have a shot at getting a grant. And some communities don't have the staff to apply for the grants. And so, and I know our participation has dipped. Maybe it's coming back up now as we come through and out of COVID. But, you know, it's easy to go to, I guess, the chorus or the choir, but to figure out, you know, why aren't people coming to the community center to sing along would be a good thought as well.
Great point, Councilmember.
Chair, if I could respond.
Please, Ms. Gary.
Councilmember Johnson, part of the process that we're going through to assess program changes, the first external step that we're taking is I've been doing a series of interviews, starting with government staff, so interviewed people at EDAs, HRAs, county staff, city staff, and we're also interviewing developers, potential applicants, folks who have applied, folks who haven't applied. And the end of those conversations, I'm always asking who else should we talk to? Because to your point, we don't know who's not applying. We don't know why people aren't applying. The data that we have is for people who are applying. So I appreciate that comment, and that's definitely a focus that we have, is reaching out to people who are not applying.
I'll add just one other anecdotal bit of evidence. When we've had some conversations with communities that haven't applied recently or that have applied and been disappointed, I've realized that the time horizon we work on is different from what our constituents may know about the program. So we've made a lot of changes in the last couple of years. We even have some new program areas we're offering. And there are many people throughout the metro who clearly haven't heard those changes yet, and so we have tried to focus a lot this year on outreach and making sure people at least know what may have changed since the last time they applied, which might have been 10 years ago or something like that. And so that's part of it too, in addition to what Hannah described.
Thank you. Councilmember
As
Johnson.
a follow-up, I really do appreciate that. And we really have to work hard at outreach because, again, some communities, you know, struggle with the appropriate amount of staff. Some communities, even recently, you know, haven't applied for all the reasons. So I don't know where you're picking and choosing, but I'm assuming that it's geographically throughout the metro counties and cities, small and big, you know, or suburban edge and urban and all the things. So that would be good, just so that we've got all those data points so that we're not wondering, gosh, is it concentrated here, concentrated there? That would be great.
Great. Further discussion, Councilmember Lindstrom, then
I think
Councilmember
Ms.
Wolf.
Gary just answered it, but I bet Dakota County CDC? CDA, oh my goodness, that's a lot. I bet they're on your list, or you probably already talked to them. I remember Councilmember Wolf calling them out specifically.
Yes,
Ms.
Chair,
Hannah.
Councilmember Lindstrom. We recently went out to Dakota County CDA to have a conversation with their staff, and the timeline is escaping me right now, but it was a few weeks ago, sometime within the last couple of months. We went out and had a very good conversation with Dakota County CDA.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Further discussion, Councilmember Wolf.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think it's important for us to look at what impact the scoring things we are doing is having. And I've been here a long time. It seems like we don't learn from the past ever. Like in the last council, everything was equity, equity, equity. So we threw in a whole bunch of equity points without regard of whether they were solving an actual problem or they just made people feel good about equity. I mean, even like our MCUB programs and our DBE quotas and everything, we look at the universe of what is there to set the numbers, where we're not doing that with livable communities. It's just based off of somebody's feelings in a meeting. So looking at, are we asking for things that are already solved? Are we asking for things that there aren't people out there going, oh, I really want to do this project, please hire me? You know, that we're preventing somebody from getting a grant because there wasn't anybody for them to put on their project team in order to get those points or whatever.
Comment or?
Chair Lilligren and Councilmember Wolf, I mean, yeah, it's a great question. Evaluating equity and how that we're scoring that can certainly be part of the conversation, and Hannah's and the rest of the team has been doing quite a lot of evaluation on that question. But also, I think the really hard part with these programs is we get a lot of really good applications and we have to choose among them, and it would be, it's always hard to say no, and there's going to be more because as a preview, these upcoming rounds that we'll be presenting for funding recommendations are both oversubscribed, and so you'll see some of the great choices we can make, and then we also have to not fund everybody because it is a limited budget.
Councilmember Johnson.
And that point is well taken. Very good projects. And I think that coming through some of the last rounds, to Councilmember Wolf's point, we could have communities that aren't concentrated in the core cities, but they may not have the experience and the expertise and the depth of some of the work around equity, and yet we're assigning points around equity, and yet it's not for lack of a great project, but they might be missing the mark. And so therefore, you know, do they need extra support and tools? Or when we're saying involve community that will be impacted, well, come out to Plymouth. We've actually have never said no to an affordable housing project, and we have fought hard to get the ones that we've got, but it's getting harder and harder. And so I will just simply say that maybe not everybody, when it comes to building affordable housing, is also starting at the same starting blocks, right? So there's definitely talented communities out there that want to do this, but if they're already in a deficit because they don't have that experience and the list of people that they can contact and maybe some of the partners already lined up, it's harder for them to score the points and get past that hurdle to be considered. So I just want to make sure that there's just not an inherent starting point for some communities. And that is not to say that we don't want communities to build these assets into the work that they're doing, but you know, this is it's not the same. Not every development has the same team around it, the same sites around it, the same funders around it, and some are well-oiled machines while some are not.
Thank you, Councilmember. Further discussion, Councilmember Wolf.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In the last round, we did have some projects that were not funded in the regular program because they didn't have enough overall points or enough equity points, including a 100% affordable at 50% AMI in Rosemount. And that money was shifted to the TOD account to provide more projects in the places that were already getting projects. And that's the kind of thing that concerns me. If we're gonna have a program, it needs to be where all parts of the region have a chance at it. If we're not gonna do that, then we should just give the money to the counties and let them distribute it so that every part of the region has an option at getting the money.
Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I'll just say one thing too, you know, to the global discussion of the 30% AMI because it's the greatest need. We can't dispute that. And we know that there's a focus at Minnesota Housing around that and Hennepin County and Minneapolis, and we are looking at that as well. I will say though that in my community, I've had really great projects, I think at 50, 60, and 80% AMI and some mixed use that included some 30%, but it's not all 30% or it doesn't meet quite the goals of that deeply affordable. And that really is tough for me to, you know, stick at just a 30% AMI when it's discouraging some communities from having mixed use with even market rate and then the other levels. And for me, I know there's a crisis. So just like in the voucher testimony earlier, there just aren't enough vouchers. And this 1,000 coming in will be welcome news for sure. But we also want to make sure that when people are doing better, they have the next place that they can move to, right? And as their income grows, they can continue to move. And I really appreciate that we're working on home ownership here too, and the tools and, you know, home ownership center and all of them that are. So I just want to say that because, you know, I think there's a starting to feel in some communities, if you can't lock in that 30, you probably don't have much of a shot anymore. So I don't know if that's true, but we just need to be mindful of maybe we are just a 30% but it really puts a chill on some of those other really good workforce housing opportunities that come our way.
Chair, Councilmember Johnson, I think that will be a focus of the conversation we have on October 2nd is really setting those priorities. Right now, the request that we have for LCDA, for example, for this coming year is more than triple the amount of money that we have to allocate. So that's a conversation that we would like to really dig into and see what are the priorities with having such a significant oversubscription for all of our programs.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Further discussion, Councilmember Carter.
Thank you. I really appreciate the vibrant discussions that we've been able to have and workshop and even hear around our vision for this work and look very forward to the next conversations. I did want to, from the perspective of our county that I've been a part of for the last 18 years, recognize that the competition or the way we put these deals together, you know, we were just observing how difficult it is to put together a 30% AMI deal and recognizing our role as government in the but-for, you know, kind of participation. So I think that focus, of course, on 30% makes so much sense, and none of us are saying that it doesn't. We cannot rule out the ability to be able to build at other levels. And I think it's really important that we do parse out this conversation so that we are able to say, this is a focus, you know, not that we have to make sure all things are equal, because it is important that we add where we must to ensure that that affordability can be brought down. And it's understandable that that means if a focus is in one place, then it does mean that there may be more dependence on the market, you know, to be able to do the work at other levels of affordability. But it should not rule out one or the other, simply to focus where we need to. And then I know that we have some capacity building to do, specifically where the issue of equity is concerned and where there may be a need to just really clearly understand and communicate and know that time will be able to help us do that education and relationship development to ensure the component of equity is a focus, that we are all able to understand that as a focus and to address it. again, I would not want to water that down when we must instead continue to say to ourselves, what does that mean? I mean, what are we talking about? We talk about equity. And then as we enter into these next sessions, really address that. What are the needs? Are they gone? You know, are they still there? Does it make sense that we are focusing on equity? And if so, then make certain that people have tools, just as we have educated ourselves with tools to be able to do the work there and ensure that their proposals are competitive and include those components that are needed. So I would really appreciate your help to just get those goals at top and understand where we are. You know, if we're done, we're done. I kind of doubt it. So I'd love to be able to keep that at top of conversation as we discuss what people need in order to be better able to address that goal.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you. Great comments. I just love hearing them all. And one of the things, and it's affirming to see that economic support has emerged as a theme, and that's one thing I'm interested in. Just listening to these comments here, you know, we have such a rich vocabulary to talk about housing and its affordability, you know, 30, 60, 80, you know. We don't have a vocabulary to talk about economic support. And one of the things that really frustrated me during my time in local government was that, you know, we're in a built environment, you're pushing for mixed use, for example, and there were tools to address the affordability of the housing above the commercial properties, but there were no tools to address the access to the businesses, to the commercial spaces. And so then I think Councilmember Wolf, you brought this up in one of our conversations. So you end up with these housing developments that have vacant storefronts because the rents are out of reach for those who would establish small businesses. So as we're moving into these next conversations, that's a piece I would like us to, at least if nobody else is going to develop a vocabulary to do it, maybe we can. And sort of encouraging that kind of support, because livable communities are not just housing dollars, they're economic development dollars as well. Cool. Yes. Further comments, questions, discussion? Great, thanks for this. I look forward to the next conversation.
Thank you.
Well, and any further business? Did you have something you wanted to add, Director Barajas? You looked like you were going to say something, so, okay.
Just to add that our next CDC meeting is a Tuesday after Labor Day, so that would be September 5th. Michelle's put out a poll early too to be asked about your availability as well. So if you haven't responded, we'd appreciate your response now.
Responded, but I'll be there.
Yeah, well, great. Anything else? Michelle, anything?
That was gonna be my announcement.
Great, all right, seeing no further business, we are adjourned. Good meeting.